Hey guys, welcome to today's video. This video is going to be my dough day, my first official dough day, which is so exciting. I have already sold 2 loaves before this, but it was just 2 loaves, so I don't feel like it was dough day just because I do 2 loaves at a time sometimes. And today was my first day actually making a batch of 8 sourdough loaves. I had 8 pre-orders, which is the only thing that I am working on right now. I decided to do only 8 loaves because I do not have refrigerator space for more. Maybe in the future I'll have more room, but as of right now, I was super excited to do the 8 loaves. And here you see me mixing my first bowl. I am doing a double batch of regular loaves here. I added my starter, my flour, my water, and my salt. And then I went ahead and mixed this dough together. And I did a total of 6 bowls. So I did 2 classic, I did 4 jalapeno cheddar, I did 1 everything bagel and cheddar loaf. And then lastly, I did a double chocolate sourdough loaf. I know this is probably not a lot to a lot of people, and it's really not, but to me it was, and I am so excited. I know a lot of people do like 100 loaves, 50 loaves, 20 loaves every week, and 8 probably sounds like you're doing nothing, but I am just super grateful that I got these 8 orders. So now I'm working on the 3rd batch of dough, and I had to pull out my 2nd jar of starter because the other one was basically gone. I was scraping everywhere for extra starter, and luckily I measured everything the night before. That way I had the exact amount of starter that I needed, and I didn't waste any or need any. So here I am just mixing the starter and the water, and then the flour and the salt. So for next time, I am definitely going to prep everything the night before, maybe measuring out or weighing out all of my ingredients. That way I could just throw everything into a bowl and mix it, because this took me forever. After I mixed all of the dough, I started to shred my cheese and cut my jalapenos and my serrano peppers. I did add a little bit of serranos to the dough as well, just to give it an extra kick. So I did 100 grams of cheddar cheese per loaf and 100 grams of jalapenos, and then I added an extra serrano to each loaf, so maybe a little bit more than 100 grams. I've seen others who add a little bit less just because it can weigh down the dough as it bakes in the oven and it won't have a big rise, but I just feel like the more the better. But also I don't know if I'm undercharging by adding too much inclusion or not, but as of right now I really like putting this much of everything into the loaves. And here I am just shredding away still. It took me like 2.5 hours just to mix the dough, shred the cheese, the jalapenos, do some stretch, and I think I did 2 stretch and folds, and that took me 2.5 hours. I don't know where the time went, but maybe I do know. I think because I had to attend to my children as well, so by the time I did the 2nd stretch and fold, it had taken me 2.5 hours. My hands were actually so sore because I do have carpal tunnel. So mixing all of the dough and just cutting everything in the same day was very hard for me. And like I mentioned before, I know other people mix way more dough than I did, but it was actually hard. And now I understand why people need those stand mixers to mix their dough, because it's actually very time consuming and it just hurts. So here I am just chopping up my jalapenos, and I like to cut them up pretty small because I feel like they get better distributed throughout the dough and it covers more space. Because if I just slice them, essentially there's less pieces, so it's not like everywhere, you get me? And also shredding the cheese helps like distribute it better, that way you don't have big pockets of cheese and holes in the dough as it rises, because if you put little blocks of cheese, then it just creates little holes, if that makes sense. So here is the serrano pepper that I will add to the bowl. I did separate the ingredients, one bowl per dough. That way each bowl gets the exact amount of inclusions. I don't want one loaf to have more or less, which is why I like to mix the dough separate too. And also I don't have those huge bins yet, but it worked out. So now moving on to the stretch and folds. I believe this is the second set right here. I am starting with the classic dough with no inclusions. And then I moved on to the everything bagel and cheddar. And then I did the jalapeno cheddars. And then I did the chocolate loaf at the end. This is the everything bagel and cheddar loaf. I also weighed out the cheese, and I am sprinkling some of that everything bagel seasoning between every stretch and fold. I added inclusions on the second and third round. So whatever I didn't add to the second round, I added it to the third until I was done adding everything to the dough. I learned a lot on this dough day. I learned that I need to prep a lot before the actual day I'm going to mix everything. I do have 3 children, so that also comes in between this dough and me just focusing on it. And it was fine, but I think prepping will help a lot. Also, I did buy some new bannetons, and they were not the size that they said they were. They were a tad bit smaller, and the liners aren't great quality. So now I know to order the good kind of bannetons, and not that these were not good or anything. They look like my other bannetons, but I just think because they sell them in bulk, the quality isn't as best. Another thing that I learned is to start weighing out my dough. So when I did the double batches, I just split the dough in half and I put them in their bannetons. But the dough was so much, they were over 1,000 grams, and the bannetons weren't big enough. They literally exploded in the refrigerator, and the dough was like so big. The loaves turned out fine, but I think next time I am going to measure out the dough to a little bit less. I've seen people who do 850 grams, 900 grams per loaf pre-bake. So I might do that next time instead of, doing 1,000 grams or more per loaf, because they were just so big, and maybe it's a good thing, but they didn't fit in my banneton. You'll see once I am shaping the dough how big they are and how much dough was in the bannetons. The banneton was literally up to the rim, and as you guys know, the dough does grow in the refrigerator as it cold proofs. And also, I think so much dough brought up the temperature in my refrigerator, so it wasn't as cold and the dough rose a lot. So now it's time to shape the dough, and this dough right here, I decided to put it in the round bannetons. I only have two, but these two doughs were going to be cut and shaped different. So one was going to be a pumpkin shape and the other one was going to be a turkey shape. So I needed to put these in a round banneton, although these didn't rise as much as the other doughs. So they weren't super ginormous, but they were perfect for the turkey and the pumpkin that I needed to make. And now you'll see me cutting and weighing out the other doughs. This one I didn't weigh out because this one was just one loaf. And then I put the rest of the doughs in the batard shape. So you'll see how big this dough was. I think all of the inclusion that I added just made them so big and heavy. And yeah, they were just so big, and I think next time for sure I'll weigh out the dough to make sure I'm not over stuffing the bannetons. So now I'm adding some of that everything bagel seasoning on top of the dough before putting it into the banneton. That way when I bake it, it'll have all of that bagel seasoning on top and it'll make it look so pretty after baking. That way when the customer sees it, they see a beautiful loaf covered in inclusions, because that's what they're paying for. They're paying for a beautiful loaf full of all of those delicious inclusions that will make their meals and their food taste so much better and just with so much flavor, and that they feel like they got their money's worth from buying my loaves. So now onto the jalapeno cheddar loaves. This one is the most popular loaf that I sell, and I made, I believe, 4 this day, and the rest were just like plain and the chocolate and the everything bagel. But look at how much dough is in this banneton. Like by the time I stitched it, they were literally up to the rim. Usually my loaves, they grow a tad bit more than this in the refrigerator, but they just blew up. This is the other jalapeno cheddar, and look, it's huge. Next time I'm definitely going to weigh these out, but I just know that the customer is going to be so happy getting so much bread and inclusion, and that makes me so happy. Now lastly, my double chocolate loaf. I added some milk chocolate chips to this dough during the stretch and folds, and I love to add milk chocolate chips because it gives it that sweetness that this loaf needs. If my customers want semi-sweet or dark chocolate, they can get that if that's what they want. I give them the option to pick which kind of chocolate chips they want. But this was the last loaf that I shaped, and look at how huge. Anyways, this was the end of my dough day. These are all of the doughs that I prepped. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe and like, and I'll see you guys in my next one.